Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Hello folks, now last week at the end of the Skidby episode I left you with a little teaser about this house right here, this white house with these bins in front of it. And I told you it's not just a normal house, it's had quite a few people in there that have been famous, shall we say. A lot of famous people have been through its doors. Did you guess what it is? If you did, well done. If not, that is Fairview Recording Studios. A lot of famous music artists have used that to record their stuff in the past. That's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about in the parish of Willerby. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Willerby is one of the biggest and most densely populated parishes in the East Riding of Yorkshire. It's effectively a suburb of Hull, occupying a tract of land that extends west from the city. It wasn't always this big. Willerby was a small village until the 20th century, and urban development has since expanded it towards Hull. The village centre is 5 miles away from Hull city centre. It's situated in an area known as Haltemprice, which was a civil parish in 1858 and became an urban district covering Willerby, Anlaby, Cottingham, Hessle, Kirk Ella, West Ella and Skidby. The Haltemprice name still lives on thanks to the Haltemprice and Howden parliamentary constituency, but here in Willerby you can also find Haltemprice Priory. Willerby's features otherwise include a small clock tower on a roundabout known as Willerby Square, the former route of a Channel favourite railway line, and a golf course. There's also some hidden gems just outside the boundaries, if you know where to look. These include a synagogue, a pumping station, and also a recording studio used by a famous name or two. Notable companies from Willerby include the Yorkshire Parish Company, commissioned to produce temporary buildings after World War II, and Willerby Caravan Company was once located on Main Street. This was a mammoth walk, some 3 hours. Let's get cracking. We start on Great Gutter Lane West. At number 1 is Fairview Recording Studios, established in 1966 by Keith Hurd, who hailed from Hopeton near Withensea. Initially recording local acts, some household names have used this studio in its time, including Sheffield band Def Leppard, who recorded their first EP here in 1979. The current studio is located in a converted barn in the back garden, but originally it was in one of the house's 2 front rooms. Other notable acts to have used it include Mick Ronson, the Housemartins, Shed 7 and the Beautiful South. It's a well-respected venue within the music industry. Right next to the studios there's a big Lidl store, one of a few supermarkets in this part of Hull. Here's the thing though, both it and the studios aren't actually in Willerby. And neither is the next thing that I'm about to show you. That's because the parish boundary with Kirk Ella is this road, the B1232. Now if you want unusual landmarks, of course that is perhaps the most unusual we've seen for quite a while. A music recording studio. We don't see them very often. And actually, it's opposite another landmark that we don't see very often as well. Behind these bushes, you can't really see it very well, you can see a building. That's a synagogue. We don't see very many of them either, do we? In fact, I think that might be the first one we've seen so far doing this. So yeah, you've got a music studio and a synagogue very close to each other. Right, I'm turning away from both of those. We're going up past that Aldi store in the distance, and let's get this route started properly. So now we go up Grange Park Lane and we're making our way through Willerby Retail Park. This houses a Waitrose supermarket, which was formerly a Safeway. The retail park features a lot of household names, including Aldi, McDonald's, B&M, Poundland, Santander, and of course the Lidl store we've just seen. The rest of Grange Park Lane is an industrial estate. This building is the base of the East Riding of Yorkshire's NHS Clinical Commissioning Group. Next, we have a branch of Screwfix. There's also a tool station next door. The head office of Image Data Group, a commercial printer, is on this estate too. Overlooking it all is a petrol station, access to which is from the A164, which at this point is a dual carriageway as it bypasses the village on the way to Beverley. At the end of the road is a Mercure Hotel, Grange Park, which occupies Willerby Grange, a converted late 19th century house. Now somewhere in this car park there's a link through to a housing estate. It looks to be this. It wasn't terribly clear on the map I was using, but it seems to be this. I'll soon tell you because I know what my next part of my route is. Let's see. Yeah, this looks right. This housing estate looks familiar. Okay, that's good. That's the tough part of this route done, because I was unsure about that. Okay, so we're through a housing estate next, before we pick up a road that runs past a school, which we'll see a couple of times on this route actually. But our next major thing to look at is a priory. Now we're off down Main Street, the oldest part of Willerby, which features some of its oldest houses. Not this is White House Close, which is obviously newer. Notable houses in Willerby include Willerby Grange, which is now the hotel we've just seen, Grange Farm, a Georgian farmhouse, which is now apartments, Willersley House, a residential care home, which is our finishing point later, and the Beeches, which is in your shot now. All of these houses are talked about on an information board, which is the second part of the Willerby Heritage Trail, and here it is. This was helpful as it showed me one I was about to miss. I walked back to the Redwoods to catch Willerby Hall. This was built in the early 1700s, and it was first occupied by William Mould, a wealthy iron ore merchant. Returning to the board, just a few paces up there's a parish notice board, and you can all mark off Willerby from your East Riding lists. 85 to go. Okay, now we've turned the corner onto Well Lane. There are a few other interesting bits and bobs on that side of Well Lane, but we'll catch them later because the route comes back up that road as we make our way back to the car later, but a long way to go before that. So this is Well Lane. There's a few things up here. We're still heading for the site of that priory, by the way. On Well Lane, the first thing I encountered was the former site of the Best Western Willerby Manor Hotel, which closed recently thanks to the COVID pandemic. It'll be replaced by housing. Next we have Wolferton School. This was built in 2016 after its two former sites amalgamated into one. Originally its lower school was in Willerby, whilst its upper school was located in Kirk Ella. The new school is built on the former lower school playing field. It's not the only educational building on Well Lane. Opposite there's Stepping Stones Preschool. There's a cricket pitch here too, which is used by Kirk Ella Cricket Club. Well Lane also has a small playground. I guess with the amount of children around here, this is ideally placed. There's also another school a short walk away. And here it is. This is the rear gate of Carr Lane Primary School, established in the 1930s. We'll see the front of this later. Okay, so at the end of Well Lane, if you turn left like I just have, you will be faced with this. Looks like a dead end. If I just get past this lorry, you'll see what I can see. But it's not a dead end because there's a path there. And that path to the right is called Abbey Lane, and that will take us down to the site of Haltemprice Priory. Once on Abbey Lane, the first thing I noticed was a triangulation point in this field, which I'm pointing out to you now. Let's head to the Priory. Haltemprice Priory was an Augustinian monastery and controlled a large swathe of land extending from Willerby to Cottingham, including Kirk Ella and southward. The priory site is classified as a scheduled monument. The monastic buildings have long since gone, although some priory stonework remains within this farmhouse originally built in 1584. This was occupied until 1988, but then it became derelict and suffered fire damage in the late 90s and early 2000s. In 2021 and 22, this was extensively rebuilt and refurbished into a private residence. The building is a mix of the original farmhouse brick and new installations that have been kept in design with the house's history. You wouldn't think you're in one of the most populated parishes in the East Riding here, would you? You really wouldn't. It feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. But that's Haltemprice Priory, literally in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by all these fields. And also, it's also surrounded by a golf course, which is what I'm making my way towards now. We're going to cross that golf course and head back into civilization. Just before we hit the golf course, we pass part of the Willerby and Derringham Bank flood alleviation scheme, built in response to the 2007 United Kingdom floods. This is one of 4 storage lagoons built in Willerby with the aim of improving local drainage. They can hold up to 205,000 cubic metres of floodwater. Now for Springhead Park Golf Course. What with all the urban expansion towards Hull, this is now the only green space between Willerby and the city. It was founded in 1930 and was originally a municipal golf course operated by Hull City Council until the Groundwork Trust took over in 2014. The original design of the course has been adapted over the years to fit in with housing developments encroaching close to the boundary of the course. The club has produced many excellent golfers over the years, including a number good enough to go on to represent the East Riding on the European Tour. And at the end of the path you'll find a white phone box. Obviously a surefire way to know you're near Hull. There's a bus stop as well. The 54 to Hull is what you can catch here. I'll show you this as well, if you'll excuse the noise of the roadworks in the background. This is the parish boundary. There's the Willerby sign, and on the other side it says, "Welcome to Hull." For me, this was the highlight of the walk. This footpath off Kingston Road passes this beautiful old building. You won't believe what this is. It's Springhead Pumping Station. A Grade 2 listed building, it was built in 1863 by Thomas Dale. No longer in use, this became the Yorkshire Waterworks Museum. I came down here really to catch these allotments, but the pumping station was a bonus. It really is gorgeous. You have to see it to believe it, folks. Trust me. We've now arrived in Wolferton. Like Willerby, Wolferton was at one time a small hamlet just to the north of Anlaby on a minor road between it and Carr Lane. In the Domesday Book, it was mentioned as Uluadune. In the 1850s, it consisted only of a few buildings, including the Springhead Inn, which was this building in shot now. A brand new Springhead Inn has since been built, along with lots more housing and these shops. It's weird to think that at one time this was all farms and fields. And here we have the current Springhead pub. There we are, on the end of Blackthorn Lane. Okay, we'll continue up this road and straight over the main road again as we head into what is effectively the village centre. Pet Shop Boys fans will like this next section. We're about to cross Kingston Road again and head up into what I'm calling suburbia. Let's see if anyone gets that one. Kingston Road is the main road into Hull through Willerby. It's mostly residential, but it does have a few amenities dotted along its length. We'll get to those shortly. After crossing the road, we find St Luke's Church on Chestnut Avenue. This area between Kingston Road and Carr Lane is the part of Willerby which developed first once it began to grow in the early 20th centuries. Suburban developments gradually made their way eastward towards Hull. That's unusual. Normally big cities expand outwards rather than the other way around. I was loving these silver birch trees on Lime Avenue, by the way. At the top of Lime Avenue, we're onto Carr Lane and we've come full circle. Here's the front entrance to the primary school, which we saw earlier. I've just checked the Strava and I've been going for almost 2 hours. I'm just a few minutes shy of 2 hours. I estimated 3 for this. It's a big place is Willerby. I think it's about right, because looking at what's left, I think it will take me about another hour to get to the end. So yeah, if you come to Willerby, it's not a small place by any stretch of the imagination. You will be walking around for ages if you attempt to do what I'm doing, but of course not everybody's that daft. Anyway, this road takes us back to the main road again. Now for a walk up Kingston Road for a short way, beginning at the end of Hawthorne Avenue. On that junction is a notable pillar box, George V this one. Kingston Road is a dual carriageway through Willerby, a major arterial route between the centre of Hull and the A164. As such, it's busy most of the day. Roughly halfway along it there's a roundabout where it meets the Parkway and Gorton Road. As you approach it, there's a row of shops on the left. These range from a convenience store to takeaways, and there's also a pottery painting studio and cafe called Tea and Biscuit in your shot now. On the other side of the road is the Hot Pole Hotel, one of Willerby's pubs. And so to the roundabout, in the middle of which is the Wilgardy statue. Installed in 2018, the statue is 4.5 metres tall and it weighs 1.5 tonnes. Signifying Willerby's heritage, it features a Viking longship and a weather vane. Okay, there's not much left now. The next part of this route takes us onto an old railway line and we'll be passing the site of an old railway station, which doesn't stand anymore because guess what? There's houses built on it. Let's go and find the line. It's down here to the right. On the border with Anlaby, look to your right and you'll see a set of steps. These lead to the track bed of the former Hull and Barnsley Railway. Part of the line is under the B1232. The route forms the parish boundary all the way up to the roundabout where the B1232 meets the A164. This section we're walking on is a raised embankment which leads to Willerby Square, the car park of which we'll emerge into at the end of it. There were 2 stations on this stretch of the line. One was Springhead Halt, which served Wolverton, and the other was Willerby and Kirk Ella station. It stood here where these houses are now, west of the junction of Carr Lane and Main Street. It opened in 1885 and closed to passengers in 1955. It featured a goods yard with a loop and 2 sidings which served a cattle dock and a coal yard. Kirk Ella Limeworks also had a private siding just to the north of here. So it's strange to think really that this area used to be so different. There used to be a railway line that ran through here. You wouldn't think it, would you? You really wouldn't think it. This area is called Willerby Square, and it's got a few other amenities. We've got a Sainsbury's local there, we've got a NatWest Bank, there's an Italian restaurant, there's a post office over there, there's a baker's, there's all sorts of things here. And it's all detailed on this board, the other part of the Heritage Trail board. We saw the other one up there earlier. Well, this is the first part to it. This is where it starts effectively. And we're going to head over that roundabout you can see in the distance and go up towards where the other one was to complete this route. So from here, number 1 is the site of the old station, 2 is Willerby Square, over this roundabout, up here, that's where the other board is, and then down Great Gutter Lane and back to the beginning. There's lots to see around Willerby Square. For starters, this Platinum Jubilee bench, which was installed last year. It's outside a former Primitive Methodist chapel. This originally opened in 1850 and was replaced in 1897 with an adjoining school hall added in 1900. In 1964, it was used as a workshop. Let's go on to the roundabout itself next, which features this clock. It was installed on the roundabout to celebrate the turn of the millennium. The shops and businesses around Willerby Square generally occupy buildings dating from the 1930s. There's a lot of estate agents here for some reason. Where Car Lane meets the roundabout, we find Willerby's current Methodist church. This is often known as the Church on the Square for obvious reasons. Both it and St Luke's Church were built in the 1960s. At 1 to 3 Car Lane is a milk bar. I also passed the very popular Milk Well earlier in this route too. It's on Well Lane. Busy old roundabout that. It's difficult to navigate as well. There are pedestrian crossings of course, but of course I wasn't using those because I'm looking for the right place to find the right shot, if you know what I mean. We've got one little bit left, and that's this street here, which leads back up towards Great Gutter Lane. There's a few more shops and things up here, and there's also the Star Inn as well, which we'll pass on the way. So yeah, almost time to end Willerby. What a long route, very long. The last stretch of this route is the second part of Main Street. This includes things like the Haltemprice and Howden Conservative Association. Over the road from this is a daycare centre for adults with disabilities. If you go up the track at the side of it, you'll find the Willerby and Kirk Ella Social Club. Next is Willerby Library. On the wall here is a plaque that commemorates the 100-year anniversary of the gifting of this building to Willerby and Kirk Ella by Henry Salmon, once of Willerby Manor. He was a ship owner and the first Baronet of Routh. The manor, of course, became the Best Western Hotel and now no longer stands. Next is the Star Inn, Willerby's other pub. It dates back to 1906 and was built following the acquisition of the business by Hull Breweries. And dating from 1837 are Manorgate Cottage and Manorgate Lodge, located at the original carriage drive entrance to Willerby Manor. And last but not least, we have Willersley House. This is a care home, and the information board which we saw earlier, the first information board, tells you all about that. Isn't that just one of the most magnificent buildings you've ever seen? Opposite this, there's a building which looks like a, whether it's an old school or a chapel or something, but it's certainly got the look of one of those two buildings about it. Not quite sure, but it's just at the entrance to the car park to Willersley House. And that's it from here. It's just a walk down here and then turn left onto Great Gutter Lane and make my way back to where I began at the music studio. It seems ages and ages ago since I was stood outside that. It's certainly got a lot warmer since then. So yeah, I do hope you've enjoyed this tour around Willerby. I forgot where I was for a moment. Oh god, that's the kind of thing that can happen after 3 hours walking. For a special section today, we're looking at Delapole Hospital, which technically isn't in Willerby Parish, it's Cottingham, but it's much closer to Willerby. The hospital was located on a site previously occupied by Delapole Farm, hence the name. It was designed by Frederick Stead Broderick and Richard George Smith. It was built in Victorian Gothic style using a courtyard plan and opened as Kingston upon Hull Borough Asylum in December 1883. It became the Willerby Mental Hospital in the 1920s before joining the NHS as Delapole Hospital in 1948. After the introduction of care in the community in the early 1980s, the hospital went into a period of decline and closed in July 1998, much like the hospital we talked about in Walkington. The main buildings have been demolished, but the associated chapel survived and is now used as part of a crematorium. The rest has been redeveloped as a business park. And here I am back where I began, at the roundabout where the McDonald's is. It's all about planning, you know. It was always my intention to end where there's food, because after 3 hours I need it. I just want to show you something else as well, just before I leave you. You remember at the beginning of the video I said that the studio and the synagogue are not actually in Willerby. They're not. As you can see, there's the sign for Kirk Ella. So they are on the Kirk Ella side of the boundary of course being this road. So I've included them here. So they belong to Kirk Ella, but obviously it doesn't make any sense to not include them here when they're right on the boundary with Willerby. And there we are, that is the parish of Willerby. And I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I am out.